was laid on the Speaker's desk and is today on its third reading. House Resolution Number 140, amending and readopting Rule 81 of the Rules of the House of Delegates pertaining to the voting requirement to discharge a committee from the consideration of a resolution. Resolved by the House of Delegates that Rule 81 of the Rules of the House of Delegates is amended and readopted as follows. Roman 5, Conduct of Business, Manual and Rules. Rule 81. The rules of the House shall be adopted in even-numbered years by a majority vote of members elected and shall remain in effect for 2 years coinciding with the terms of members. The rules may be suspended by a vote of 2/3 of the members elected to be ascertained by an actual division of the House, except as prohibited by the Constitution, provided that a motion to discharge a committee from the consideration of a bill, insert, or resolution shall require a majority of those voting, which shall include 2/5 of the members elected to the House. The vote thereon to be taken by yeas and nays and recorded in the journal, and provided further that a motion to dispense with the printing and reading of a bill or its printing on the calendar or either shall not be entertained except as provided by the Constitution. A proposition to change a rule of the House shall be submitted in writing and forthwith printed. In its printed form, it shall lie upon the Speaker's table for 5 days and be read by the House during the morning hour of each day during that time. At the expiration of 5 days, it shall be ready for consideration and may be adopted or rejected by a majority vote of the members elected, provided that as to all resolutions or bills which involve an appropriation or expenditure of money by the Commonwealth or which may create a charge upon the Treasury, the rule of the House shall not be changed or suspended save by a vote of 2/3 of the members present to be ascertained by an actual division of the House. Upon a motion to suspend a rule of the House, the mover shall be allowed 2 minutes to state the reasons for his motion, and one member opposed to the motion shall be allowed a like time to object. This constitutes H.R. 140's third reading. Madam Speaker, that completes my announcements, and the Speaker requests members to use their request to speak buttons to be recognized.
The delegate from Chesterfield, Delegate Coiner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a motion and 2 introductions.
Wow. Delegate Coiner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to take up out of order House Joint Resolution 335 on page 53 and House Joint Resolution 441 found on page 53.
Delegate Coiner requests that HJR 335 on page 53 and HJR 441 taken up out of order. Will the clerk please report the resolutions?
Page 53.
The House will be at ease.
I'm so sorry. House Joint Resolution 335, commending the Hopewell Prince George Chamber of Commerce, and House Joint Resolution 441, commending the Hopewell Dixie Youth Baseball Majors All-Star Team.
Thank you, Madam
Delegate
Speaker.
Coiner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to pass both HGR 335 and HGR 441.
All those in favor of the adoption of HJR 335 on page 53 and HJR 441 on page 53 shall say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the resolutions are adopted.
Thank you, Madam
Delegate
Speaker.
Coiner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first introduction this morning, I have the privilege of introducing on behalf of myself, Delegate Brewer, and Delegate Aird. I'd ask that the Hopewell Prince George Chamber of Commerce please rise if they're in the gallery. The Chamber of Commerce is celebrating 100 years of service this year. In each decade since its founding, the Chamber has focused on impactful projects for the community, developmental programs for its youth, and support for Fort Lee through federal base realignments and the significant expansion in 2005. More recently, the Chamber of Commerce expanded to manage a Virginia Visitor Center to promote the Commonwealth with initiatives that attract visitors and benefit citizens. The Hopewell Prince George Chamber of Commerce is a trusted resource as it helps employers, employees, and military families thrive in our community. In the gallery this morning are several corporate members of the Chamber who are here to show their support of and gratitude to the House. Please welcome Bank of Southside Virginia, Advance 6, Swift Creek Mill Playhouse, John Randolph Medical Center, Appomattox Regional Library System, J.W. Enox, Marks & Harrison, J.T. Morrison Son, and others. I ask my fellow members to join me in welcoming the Chamber of Commerce and celebrating their meaningful anniversary.
It's great to see the Hopewell Prince George Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations on your special anniversary and enjoy the day today. Thanks for what you do for the community. Delegate Coiner.
Madam Speaker, my second introduction this morning, and I know the Chamber of Commerce would agree, while theirs is important, this is even more meaningful. With us today in the gallery is an amazing youth baseball team from Hopewell. I would ask that they please rise. These 11 and 12-year-olds won the Dixie League National Division II World Series in Lumberton, North Carolina last summer. Trailing 1-0 going into the sixth and final inning, they scored 6 runs, Delegate Ferris, to sprint away with a 6-1 victory against a team from Mississippi for the final. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time a team from Virginia has claimed the Dixie World Series title at any age level in the 75 years of the Dixie Baseball Classic. This is the 4th year this team has played together. The roster includes Anthony Clark, Camden Hunt, Ryder Hazlett, Christian Edwards, Colson McComber, Tavin Tucker, Demetrius Sims, Ethan McComber, Jake Irby, Xavier Taylor, Brian Moore, and Luke Coons. The team is coached by Clint Gorkowitz, Joe Coons, and Ricky Irby. And if you remember, Coach Irby joined us last week as head coach of the Hopewell High School football team champions, so he's had a lot to celebrate this year. I will say, though, even though they are World Series champions, what I am most proud of, and I think as Virginia we should be most proud of, not only were they winners, but they won the Sportsmanship Award. And they show us as a state, yes, the importance of being the best at something, but being humble and treating others well. And I'm most proud of their families, because that's where we know that it starts, and their coaches who instilled in them the importance of sportsmanship. So thank you, parents who joined us today as well. Thank you.
Congratulations. We're thrilled to have you here today, and I know it took a lot of hard work to achieve those amazing trophies. Did you all see those trophies? And it's quite some bling there. Well, congratulations. We appreciate your sportsmanship as well, and as Delegate Coiner says, that's most important, how you treat others. So congratulations. Enjoy your day today. We're very proud of you. The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise for 2 motions and an introduction.
Delegate Rome, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 53, I move that we take HJR 459 out of the block. That's page 53, HJR 459.
Okay. Will the clerk please report HJR 459 on page 53?
HJR 459, commending Yorkshire Restaurant.
And Madam Speaker,
Delegate Rome, you have the
I
floor.
move adoption of the resolution.
All those in favor of adopting HJR 459 on page 53 shall say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam
Resolution is
Speaker.
adopted.
Madam Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Delegate Rome, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Joining us in the gallery today are my constituents from Yorkshire Restaurant. If they would stand up, please. So the staff of Yorkshire Restaurant, basically, they go back to 1979. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary right along the Route 28 corridor in the Manassas part of Prince William County. And Mr. Ellis Nator and his family, they have since ensured that the restaurant is welcoming and inclusive of everyone who walks through that door. Yorkshire Restaurant is a staple to our community. Not only does it serve delicious and traditional Southern-style comfort food that I think even our Education Committee Chair would say is good, but the restaurant has been heavily involved in giving back to the community as well through such selfless acts of service by donating meals to the local fire department, local schools such as Yorkshire Elementary School, as well as Little League teams, the Lions Club, and nearby churches. Yorkshire Restaurant is more than just an amazing restaurant. It's a place where many within the community have found support, belonging, and comfort. We thank the staff and we thank the of Yorkshire Restaurant for all their contributions to our community, access service, and it's for people like y'all that we are so committed to fixing Route 28. So I would please appreciate it if our colleagues here could please give them a warm house welcome.
Welcome, and we look forward to patronizing the Yorkshire Restaurant at some point. I have never been there myself, but thanks for what you do for the community and continued good success. The delegate from Campbell, Delegate Ferris.
Madam Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Delegate Ferris, you have the floor.
Is this the right time, Terry? Should I stand up? Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. I'm glad my baseball teams first came. I'm glad they came last week because mine were just the state represented, just won the state. They didn't do as good as you boys did. But anyhow, today I'd like to thank and welcome the Reverend Adam Tyler. He's a pastor of Grace Hills Baptist Church in Appomattox. Dr. Tyler's a native of Buckingham County, where he lived for 10 years. Now he's here with his wife Candace and the two children Jonathan and Phoebe in Appomattox. He's current president of the Baptist General Association of Virginia, which has about 1,400 churches. I'll let you know he's also the pastor of the gentleman from Appomattox whose shoes that I'm trying to fill. I'd like to welcome him and hope we'll give him a nice house welcome.
Welcome, Reverend Tyler and Cadence, and especially special welcome to Jonathan and Phoebe. Jonathan, I've enjoyed having a great conversation with Jonathan earlier. Thank you, Reverend, for what you do for the community, and thank you for being here and sharing with us your inspiring words this morning. Thank you. The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Askew.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise for introduction.
Delegate Askew, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, to have the privilege of introducing Virginia Beach native Jamal Potter. I ask that him and his family please rise. Mr. Potter is a graduate of the University of Virginia's College at Wise and the author of the children's book, Where's the Wood Booger? Inspired by a Southwest Virginia folklore recounting the search for a Bigfoot-like mythical creature believed to reside in and around Wise County in the city of Norton. Over the years, Mr. Potter has advocated for children's education by encouraging them to open their eyes, use their imagination, and fall in love with learning. This year, the House has recognized Mr. Potter for his efforts to motivate the youth of the Commonwealth to read with House Resolution 114, patroned by Delegate Converse Fowler. Please join me in giving Mr. Potter and his family a warm house welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Potter, to you and your wonderful family, and thank you for your advocacy on behalf of children's education as well. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of person. I rise for introduction.
Delegate Herring, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm honored today to introduce to you a group of women who work hard to improve our community. It is the Old Dominion, Virginia chapter of the Links Incorporated. If they could please stand. The Links Incorporated was founded in 1946 and is one of the oldest and largest volunteer service organizations of women who are committed to enriching sustaining and ensuring the culture and economic survival of African Americans and other persons of African ancestry. In 1993, the Old Dominion VA chapter was founded. It has a record of award-winning service, including providing dental exams for children, running a science and engineering program for children every month, and providing education about health. They are led today by the chapter president, Nancy Whiting. I am proud to be a member, and I ask that the House give them a warm welcome.
Welcome to the Old Dominion chapter of the Links. I got the memo. Yeah, I'm just president. And welcome to you all, and thank you for your advocacy and your support in the community on so many important issues. Enjoy your day. Pursuant to House Rule 30, the Journal shall reflect that the following members are away on pressing personal business and are granted leave from today's session. Delegate Converse Fowler. The clerk will please announce the next order of business.
Second morning hour order of business. The next order of business is the announcement of member requests to move legislation from any uncontested to regular calendar. Page 1 of the calendar, Senate Bill 731. Page 4 of the calendar, Senate Bill 172. Page 17 of the calendar, Senate Bill 1032.
The clerk shall announce the next order of business.
Third morning hour order of business. The next order of business is the announcement of member requests for legislation to go by for the day and the subsequent motion by the majority leader. Page 18 of the calendar, Senate Bill 851. Page 19 of the calendar, Senate Bills 860, 988, Senate Bill 988, and Senate Bill 998. Page 36 of the calendar, Senate Bill 1065.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Madam Speaker, I move that the legislation as announced by the clerk go by for the day.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that the legislation is just announced by the clerk go by for the day. As many as favor the motion shall say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion is agreed to. The clerk will please announce the next order of business.
Madam Speaker, fourth morning hour order of business. The next order of business is requests by members for points of personal privilege.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Guzman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Guzman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we celebrate Women's History Month, I want to take a moment and recognize how important and influential women have been in our history. I am proud of all the accomplishments we have had and of the progress we have made in the fight for equality. Even though women are the majority of the population, we are often underrepresented in legislative bodies. 4 years ago, this body only had 17 women serving. 2 years ago, we bumped that number to 28. After last year's election, when I ran, I was asked how I was going to manage raising my children, legislating, and that we are all here to serve, as able to work with the first female speaker, the first female clerk this year, something that has been long overdue. Our female majority leader, a courageous, strong woman of color, is doing an amazing job. And we also have a female as caucus chair for the minority party. I'm also proud about the number of women that we have in this assembly and staff now. We have a record number of women serving this Commonwealth, and it is because women are taking a bigger role and our voices are being heard. Women have made huge strides in this chamber. This change has led to many pieces of legislation passing that will benefit women throughout the Commonwealth. The first and probably most important of these is the Equal Rights Amendment, declaring that Virginia acknowledges women are equal to men, something we should all believe, but the majority of this chamber agrees that it should be in the Constitution. We have passed bills removing cruel and unnecessary barriers for women, ensuring that all women have access to safe and timely reproductive health care. I'm also proud of the work we are doing with paid sick days, which will allow everyone to take time off from work to take care of themselves or their sick family members. The inspiration from this bill was a single mother I met while knocking on doors in Del City, who struggled monetarily anytime she had to take time off work to take care of her sick children. I've been there myself, Madam Speaker. I know the struggle of having to choose between being able to afford food or rent or taking care of your sick child. We have passed legislation requiring employers to make reasonable accommodations to pregnant women and illegalizing discrimination because of pregnancy. One of the things I have been most excited about, that we are not only increasing the minimum wage this session, is that we're finally removing the domestic workers exemption. This exemption mostly affects low-income women of color, and most recently female immigrants. And it is exciting to see Virginia making progress and moving farther towards equity. We are not leaving anyone behind. Another exemption that will be removed is the farm workers exemption. We need to make sure that people who are working on our farms, who put us as #1 in the agribusiness industry, are paid a living wage and are able to live comfortably. Our state and local employees are also crucial to running Virginia. They are the backbone of our communities, and if they tell us what the problems excite us, or firefighters for better equipment, or nurses also for more resources, we should listen to them. Virginia will be in a better place when public employees have the right to collectively bargain. Talking about women's rights, I also want to bring up someone who inspired me, Dolores Huerta, who worked hard to organize farm workers for better work conditions and was able to successfully negotiate one of the first farm worker and corporate bargaining agreements. She was the only woman to serve on the board of the United Farm Workers and work for the rights of farm workers for decades. Dolores was a mother of 11 children, and she had to make so many sacrifices so that she could raise her kids and fight to create a better world. She was the only woman that was able to be a leader of labor at the time, and after she to run for office at all levels. She never stopped fighting. I was proud to work with her these last couple of years, and I'm excited to see the rising number of women running for office. She truly is an amazing woman of power. And if you want to learn more about her, I would encourage you all to watch the movie about her life, Dolores. One of my favorite quotes comes from Dolores, where she says, "We must use our lives to make the world a better place to live, not just to acquire things. That is what we are put on earth for. We all know we have a role in this world, and through our own beliefs, we all fight to improve the world." It would be much easier to continue Virginia's history of working for corporations and ignoring the people. But our jobs force us to do much more than that. We are trying to give a voice to the voiceless. As mothers, we always think about the future and how the world will look for our children. And that guides our desire to improve the world in all facets. From working so they can get a good, affordable education, to protecting the environment so that our children will have a place to live for decades to come. As we celebrate Women's History Month, I hope that you all can remember and thank a woman who has been impactful in your lives. I want to thank all of my female colleagues for putting yourselves out there and running for office. Together, we're going to ensure that the voices and points of views of women throughout the Commonwealth are represented as we legislate. To the little girls and young women who look up to us, we challenge you to fight for our values and want you to know to be right, even when it's difficult and harrowing. And know that even the biggest dreams can be achieved with perseverance, dedication, and hard work. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Culpeper, Delegate Freitas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Freitas, you have the floor.
Oh, I love to hear the groans over there. Madam Speaker, Delegate Miras gave I think, a very impassioned speech a couple of days ago with respect to the dangers and some of the concerns with respect to socialism. And the response he got was an interesting one, because the response was ultimately not a defense of socialism. The response ended up being more of a diatribe and an indictment of the United States and all of our previous sins. And it was amazing to me because as we heard the list of everything the United States is apparently responsible for, both in this country and across the world, there were certainly elements of truth to it. But I found it fascinating to hear that that was all followed up by "we fundamentally deny." Who exactly in the United States is fundamentally denying that the United States government treated African Americans badly? Who's fundamentally denying that the United States government treated Native Americans badly? Who is fundamentally denying that the United States has been involved in foreign interventions that it shouldn't be? Nobody's denying that. In fact, I would tell the delegate to make these accusations that if you want to look for regimes that fundamentally deny their past and current sins, I would encourage you to actually look at those regimes which have adopted the socialist philosophy. Because as we look at what was happening within the Soviet Union, we didn't see Pravda getting up there and actually doing a good editorial response to what Stalin was doing when he was actually massacring and starving out his own people. We don't see the press under Red China that was going and talking about the tens of millions of people that were dying under Mao's Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. We see people being locked up in Cuba and Venezuela for being political dissenters. So while yes, while the United States does have things within our history that we can be ashamed of and that we should seek atonement for, the idea that we don't have a discussion, or we don't have a press, or we don't have an academia that is willing to actually call out those episodes in our history, and that we don't have people on both sides of the aisle that recognize those points of our history and seek to actually make atonement, is ridiculous. But that is very common in socialist regimes. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that socialism has become something of a caricature because of the way it's been represented to many people in this country by socialists. Delegate Carter did not actually describe what socialism was, or whether it was a particular brand of socialism that he supported. He simply listed out a series of objectives. We want people to be free from want. We want people to have food. We want people to have clothes. We want people to have shelter. We want people to have health care. I've got news for everybody. We all want those things. The devil is in the details with respect to how do you actually intend to achieve those things. And as I look at socialism, and I will give you this much, socialism has done a really good job of rebranding itself, because every time it fails, it seeks to come out and say, well, that wasn't real socialism. But there is a common theme within that political philosophy, and that theme is the abolition of the private ownership of the means of production. That's the common theme throughout socialism. So if that's what you want, it's very simple. What it essentially means is that private companies don't exist when it comes to capital, don't exist when it comes to factories, don't exist when it comes to laboratories. We're going to allow the people or the government to run those institutions for us. And here's my question. Can we think of a socialist regime that has actually implemented this sort of central planning and government control over the economy that has actually produced the sorts of results or objectives that Delegate Carter has listed? I would suggest, Madam Speaker, that as we look at the various debates going on this floor, the true test of whether or not this socialism works as a political philosophy is not going to be found in my opposition to it or Delegate Carter's support of it. It's going to be found by what do people do that have lived under those regimes? What do those people do? What are the poor people in those regimes? What are the poor people across the world? What do they seek out? Do they seek out socialist regimes, or do they seek out free market economies? Because last time I checked, I don't have much of a recollection of American workers in this country running down to the south of Florida, making makeshift rafts and desperately trying to get to the socialist utopia of Cuba. I don't recall people in West Germany desperately risking life and limb to go over, under, or through the Berlin Wall in order to make it into the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. But I've got good news. Here in a free country, if you would like to live as a socialist, you are welcome to do so. You can get a bunch of your friends together, you can go get some property, and then you can go live in a commune. And guess what? I'm not going to try to stop you. I'll even try to lower your taxes. But you can't force me to go with you, and you can't force me to pay for it. And that is the true problem with socialism as it has been applied throughout history, no matter where it's attempted. It has always resulted in oppression, violence, and degradation. So much so that the people from those countries are desperately trying to get to this country. And so, Madam Speaker, I would just simply say the United States is not just a country of entrepreneurs, it's not just a country of scientists, of artisans. We are also ultimately a country of people that rebel against any sort of political philosophy which would seek to deprive us of our liberty. And that is why I believe that socialism will never take root here in the United States. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Fredericksburg, Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Cole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Many of us have been here and know that the General Assembly has been in existence since 1619, but in 1848 we gained a few friends that joined us. They're known to us today as the House Pages. Yesterday I was privileged and honored to serve as a page for our page debate. Many of you don't know that I actually was a page in 2005, so I was just taking a trip down memory lane. And Delegate Jay Jones was also a page in 2004, and we served and we helped out. One of the great things I loved is how the pages have observed this session, learn how we work with policy, learn how we work with procedure, and they would scream and holler, "I move the pending question." They screamed and hollered, "Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker." And so I thought it was so amazing that these are now our future leaders who will go on to become doctors, lawyers, pastors, future delegates, governors, congresswomen, congressmen, and they are taking part in history right here in the Virginia General Assembly. With that, Madam Speaker, I would like to just name a few of the leaders who were appointed by their pages: the Speaker, Lucas Addison, the Clerk, Lena Ketcheresian, and the Sergeant at Arms, Mercurius Yasa. And so I want to thank all the pages that have served during the 2020 General Assembly. This has arguably been one of the busiest and contentious sessions we have had. And they have come in every day bright-eyed and ready to go to work. And I would simply ask that all members of the House just stand up and give a rounding applause to our wonderful House pages. Madam Speaker, I would also say that I might be putting in a request in the budget next year to move Meriwether's back up and downstairs where kitchens used to be, because that's a long journey.
These pages, you all really have been remarkable. We so appreciate your hard work and efforts every single day, and also you were very impressive on the floor, and I think Meriwether's has totally run out of ice cream and milk for the day. Thank you, Delegate Cole. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A point of personal privilege.
Delegate Watts, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues that currently represent the 100 seats that are chosen by the voters of the Commonwealth, I'd like to make a few personal observations. In 2001, my district was changed, and I received 40% change in district as I got to know a lot of new best friends and good buddies. In 2011, I was assured that no problem, and I got over 40% new friends and new buddies. 40% 2 decades in a row. And as I have said, how in the world are people supposed to hold me accountable if they don't even know who represents them? And particularly in 2011, as in my case, my communities, my neighborhoods are very often subdivisions, as 60 people are cut off from the 2,000 neighbors that are part of that subdivision. Now, in 2001, it was pretty obvious exactly what happened, because I was the westernmost Democrat, and if you put the most Democratic strength into the eastern districts, then my district became significantly more competitive. But in 2011, even though I followed it as closely as I possibly could, looking at all of the public records that were available, it was not until almost a decade later, as I'm reading the court briefs, that I understand, light bulb goes on, that the whole idea of one man, one vote, 1% differential, wasn't done for some criteria, but it was done specifically to be able to use the smallest possible unit of census tracts and pack blacks into as few districts as possible of influence. And by doing that statewide, it was hidden as to what the intent was. So this is why when I approach the votes on both the procedural vote on House Bill 1256, where we can start July 1 on redistricting, and the constitutional amendment that was drafted last year, which does not start until November 15th by the deadlines, I come away extremely concerned. And with a lot of soul searching, we'll end up voting against the constitutional amendment with the strong belief that what we can do is laid out in HB 1256, what we can do with no excuses. Let me expound on that for just a little bit. Normally, the Constitution, you have to change it to do the right thing. There is nothing in the Constitution that keeps us from doing the right thing. What I am concerned in passing the setting in place for future generations doesn't start until November 15th, then there's another deadline that's January 1st, and then there's another deadline that is February 1st, and it isn't until February 1st when the commission finally sits down and names a chairman. Just all of those wasted months and while it seems to be open, it is not open to public input. We can start under 1256, no later than October. All of the steps that we have in the constitutional amendment will be carried out. You'll have the same selection as far as the bipartisan, nonpartisanship. All of those steps will be carried out, and by October 1st, we're up and ready to go, and throughout the Commonwealth, we can have an open process of public hearings so that we're really able to have that body understand what community of interests are as they are defined throughout the Commonwealth in their great variety. And with that, you can come up with potential outlines. I say that because I was first personally involved in redistricting in 1981, working under my mentor. I know what it's like to put all those blocks together. And you can have those potential blocks of community interest in several different drafts, ready to go with a lot of public input, openness. And then, when the final figures come out in approximately the April timeframe, then you can refine it. But meanwhile, what you are refining is an open public process, not setting into place this very closed system that will be staff-driven and hidden behind closed doors. And for people like myself, speaking in 2011, who tried their darndest, and you know that I'm a detail person, to understand what was going on in 2011, it was hidden. And that is what I cannot vote for as we move forward to the future. I hope that as you think about the people who will be sitting in your seats, elected by the people of the Commonwealth, that you too will not want to set this in granite, but instead will have your first loyalty to an open process. Thank you.
The delegate from Suffolk, Delegate Brewer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I want to just take a moment to raise a actually a happy topic today. First, I want to thank my colleagues for voting for H.R. 146 yesterday. Look it up. You'll enjoy it later. But it was commending the return of Mr. Peanut as baby nut. March also is National Peanut Month. So I thought I would share a couple fun facts about peanuts with some of my colleagues. Did you know it takes 540 peanuts to make a 12-ounce jar of peanut butter? Did you know there is more protein in peanuts than any other nut, and they're cholesterol-free? Did you know that peanuts contribute $4 billion to the U.S. economy every year? So, I hope my colleagues would pay attention when they're having their peanut butter and jelly. Hopefully we'll have that one day, Madam Speaker. But more seriously, peanuts are so vital to our Commonwealth, to our economy, and especially to our farmers. So if you have a chance, like the farmer from Vienna, or maybe our friend Delegates Weber or Knight, thank a farmer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Levine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Levine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On Monday, on the Privileges and Elections Committee, we had a vote on the constitutional amendment, the so-called redistricting amendment, the amendment I call the gerrymandering amendment. I voted no on that, but the amendment passed out of committee. And a few minutes after casting my vote, I got a text from a friend, a fellow Virginian, and the text says, and I quote, "Why do we even bother to elect Democrats if they just willingly hand their power back to Republicans anyway? Your colleagues are bringing a bouquet of flowers to a gunfight." Madam Speaker, I know that the folks across the aisle strongly support this amendment. We have heard repeatedly from Delegate Cole, Delegate Gilbert, several times by both of them this session, how much they really, really want this constitutional amendment. They have said so very clearly. And although when they said they wanted to prevent gerrymandering, there was a little bit of snickering and scoffing on our side of the aisle, I have no doubt that they want this amendment. And to understand what someone wants, a lot of times you have to look at the history of what they've done. So the delegate from Spotsylvania County, the gentleman from Shenandoah, have been here quite a while. They were both here in 2011 when we had a very strong gerrymander in favor of Republicans. In fact, it was an illegal racial gerrymander. You don't take my words for it. You can take the word of the United States Supreme Court, not generally considered to be a liberal body. They found by 7-1 that 11 districts were racially gerrymandered, and the one dissent, Justice Thomas, found that 12 districts were racially gerrymandered. So when it comes to gerrymandering, we know that the gentleman from Spotsylvania, the gentleman from Shenandoah, really, really like it. In fact, when Democrats, a lot of people on my side of the aisle, Delegate Plum has probably done this for 30 years now, have put forward bills, maybe longer, 40 he says, put forward bills to have an independent commission, a bipartisan commission, to take it out of our hands. Repeatedly, consistently, every single time those bills died in subcommittee or were not heard at all. So we know that the Republicans of Virginia support to their heart's delight. Go ahead, rig the elections, leave the voters out of it. It's just fine, says the United States Supreme Court as of last year. Just don't racially gerrymander. That's against the Voting Rights Act. But otherwise, go forth and gerrymander. So when they support, are there any restrictions in the constitutional amendment against gerrymandering? No, there are none. There are none. All the constitutional amendment requires is the gentleman from Spotsylvania and the gentleman from Shenandoah to agree, and suddenly it goes to the Supreme Court. The whole commission system gets thrown out the window if the two of them want that to happen. Doesn't matter if 8 citizens want us to do independent commission. It doesn't matter if the other 6 legislators want it. If those two want to go to the Supreme Court, it goes to the Virginia Supreme Court. And what will the Virginia Supreme Court do? Well, the constitutional amendment tells us in 11 words. It says, the district shall be established by the Supreme Court of Virginia. That's what it says. No more, no less. No guardrails, no criteria, no independent commission. They get to decide. They get to decide on their own. Now, Democrats, including my colleague Delegate Price, have proposed an alternative. We have said, let's have a true bipartisan commission. That's in HB 1256. And we'll get it right for 2021. We'll put a constitutional amendment in by 2022. It will be permanent. It will be done right. But the constitutional amendment that we're voting on, everyone agrees is flawed. I actually haven't met a single person yet, maybe someone will come to me, but I've not met a single person yet that says, I like this constitutional amendment exactly the way it is. Opponents clearly think it's flawed. Supporters think it's flawed. One Virginia 2021 thinks it's flawed. Brian Cannon thinks it's flawed. We even heard the gentleman from Spotsylvania say, yeah, it's not the way I want it to be. So nobody really likes what this amendment says. And of course, my colleague to my right here, Delegate Watts, points out there's all kinds of time problems with it. We may be having we may know our districts in September and have primaries in October. We'll have less time than a special election. That may well happen in 2020. She also mentions the transparency problems with it. But